Alright, folks, and we are running. Thanks for joining me today here. Herdalas, doing pretty well, man. Glad to hear you're doing good. Escortigan, Triff, Progressor. Yeah, that's about it, Progressor. Just laziness. I don't have a whole lot of time today, actually, so I'm, instead of trying to record, we're just gonna fucking wing this, do it live. Nickel and Rucker, nice to see you. Anyone else who hasn't said anything, glad you could join me. So, as you all know, yesterday, a patch dropped for Dominions. Patch 5.29. We've got that right up here. Hey, Benjamin. So, patch 5.29 altered a lot of shit. It changed things. I'm not quite sure how much. It definitely did change things some, and we're going to talk about that. We'll kind of have to see how things shake out, though. It's a little bit too early to really have a very solid look at how much. Hey, Poljo, Broken, Tonami, nice to see y'all. So, the headline changes up here. Maximum Dominion strength is no longer capped at 10, so temples can increase it above 10. That doesn't affect a lot of the things you might think, but it increases the chance of beating up other people's Dominion if you have a lot of temples. And it means you can mass recruit sacreds if you have really easily recruitable sacreds. That affects a few nations. It gives more... There's more of a reason now to take really high Dominion on a Pretender God, but I think you probably still won't ever do it. I think generally this is only going to be effective if you're one of those nations that really spams temples, that relies on a lot of mage priests, or relies on recruiting a lot of national priests. So for example, I think this is actually a stealth Solaria buff. I think Solaria loves this, because they can take a lot of scales, and churn out a ton of temples, and churn out a lot of priests and a lot of long dead, and also this will help push their Dominion, so the enemy is always fighting in negative Dominion. That said, it also helps like Makone, with the Makone line that have access to the, have the Dom strength, the Dominion, I forget what it's called, Dominion aggressiveness or something. They get a bonus to Dominion conflict. The Dominion conflict bonus, that's what it's called. Especially if they can cast Gigantomachia, although I don't know if Gigantomachia got changed. I have not seen all the changes. I have not gone through everything yet. Dominion 10 boost, yes, that could also be a boost for Urmor. I've been told, I haven't checked this myself, but I've been told by people I believe, that it allows Urmor to get more than 10 death gems per turn from temples. And yes, of course it helps Yomi since they're spamming temples all over the place. It doesn't help them a huge amount. There were a number of nerfs to blesses, and changes to blesses and scales, which we'll talk about in just a minute. But the other headline changes up here. Global blood rituals now have their strength value divided by 2 for dispelling. I don't know why my mouse isn't always picking up here, but in any case, because blood slaves are easier to get than normal gems. This is a step in the right direction. It's not really balanced, question mark, but it's a step in the right direction, definitely, because of course blood slaves are a lot easier to amass than gems are. So, this change means that if someone puts up Astral Corruption or Blood Vortex or what have you, there is at least a prayer of dispelling it because it only counts as having been cast with, say, 100 or 150 gems instead of 200 or 300. That said, still hard to dispel, probably the hardest in the game by far, but it's at least possible now. This is, to me, the most interesting change. It's not probably the most impactful, actually, going through this whole list, but it's the most interesting, and it's one that I've been agitating for a while. Any Soul Slay effect will now kill immortal beings. Now, there's not a ton of Soul Slay effects in the game. The most obvious is, of course, the spell Soul Slay. I believe there's also an item. It's a crossbow. There's a crossbow that, I believe, Soul Slays. The ethereal crossbow here? Yes, it has a Soul Slay effect. So this should also permanently kill immortal units if they fail the MR negates check to get rid of it. That said, highly unreliable. Precision +5. Mindless units are immune to it, so it's not useful on mindless immortals. I don't know that there are actually any of those. But still. There are at least now more ways to remove immortals. Now, of course, Astral nations, the ones who can use Soul Slay in an effective way, could also already use Enslave Mind, but Enslave Mind is a harder spell to cast, so this at least makes it easier to deal with Wraith Lords, Vampire Lords, Worm Mages, all those kinds of raiders, which is nice. Yeah, Incarnate Blesses got hit hard, and to be honest, the single most impactful change is probably the Bless changes. What else? So, looking through the list here, you gotta love this. You gotta love Illwinter. Many balance changes. Yep, that's great. I think this is just a facet of them being a two-person team who are doing this in their spare time. They're just not going to put out a real detailed errata, a real detailed change list. So we just kind of have to discover things. Snake, the Earth Snake? Yes, the Earth Snake is garbage now. But in any case, we'll talk about this. These are interesting to me. These are spells that never actually got cast. Mechanical Militia got more min and an Iron Fly. If we look at Iron Fly, this is the unit that Mechanical Militia now spawns. It's actually a pretty sweet unit. It has a shock biting weapon, which does 5 damage, and is, of course, armor negating and magical. It has all the resistances, 18 prot, decent hit points, and it flies. This is a pretty cool little gadget, so Mechanical Militia might now be useful. Is Ulm nerfed? I don't think Ulm is nerfed, particularly. Phantasmal Province Defense for Fata Morgana. We also have Phantasmal... I guess they're not... That's not right. Hold up. Phantaz. So, Phantasmal Warrior, Phantasmal Beast, Phantasmal Knight, Phantasmal Archer. This is the new unit. It has Phantasmal Bows, so you can now shoot archers. Shoot arrows, rather. It is summoned by the 20s, it looks like. And then you also have the standard Phantasmal Warriors, Wolves, Beasts, Knights, and Chiefs that you already had. What else? Yes, they did fix the Ring of Returning bug, I believe. And a number of the PG chassis got nerfed. Spell AI improvements. I have no idea what to think about this. It might be really handy. It might change the game a lot, but we'll probably never know exactly how. So we'll leave that alone. That's kind of neat. Teleporting units can now cross Sea of Ice. Blood Globals, we talked about that. That is a fix to a bug that people have been using for a long time, or, well, probably a bug. Most of the time, 2 items of the same kind don't stack, and now that's also true for Bracers of Defense. So you can't stack 2 Bracers of Defense, cast Legions of Steel, and suddenly get plus 10 armor prot. This is actually a pretty interesting little change. It used to be that the Vampire Queen had a small chance to spawn vampires every turn, much like vampires have a chance to spawn thralls every turn. Now, instead, she just automatically spawns, I think it's 1d4 every midwinter. So it's much more reliable, and it's more vampires overall. But we'll see how much that change is. Yeah, as Cordigan, Immortals are still very relevant. They're slightly easier to permanently kill now. There is actually a risk that in raiding an Astral Heavy Nation, you will permanently lose your Immortals, which didn't used to be true. Now it's true. That still doesn't mean they're irrelevant. It might mean Wraithlords are... I don't know. You could make an argument, I suppose, that Wraithlords are slightly overpriced, but I don't know that I buy it. New Disciple titles, the most important change. These are just basic little changes. That's unimportant. This was the Ring of Returning bug, which they have fixed. So the Ring of Returning no longer removes afflictions when you use it. It used to be that if you used a Ring of Returning, all of your afflictions except the last one were automatically removed, which was sort of hilarious. Knights can still have a hoof attack even after losing both arms. That's pretty cool. Better sight search warning. Better naming for trinities, all fairly unimportant. Centaur commanders can now equip magic lances, so they count as cavalry now. Once again, little minor changes. This is actually a deceptively big change. Mirror image no longer removed by poison, blood vengeance, and similar. I'm not sure what and similar means exactly, but basically this means that damage over time or magic damage effects that don't come from actually being hit by something don't remove mirror image, and that also means they don't remove glamour. This is an elf buff. This makes elf troops harder to deal with because the effects that people used to use to remove glamour from tons and tons of elves no longer do so. Why in Midwinter? I don't know why in Midwinter. That's just the way it is. They decided to do it. Wither Soul, yes, I agree. There should be a fire spell with the Soul Slay effect. That would be pretty amazing. AI performance improvement, cool, fine. Fix for Ritual of Rebirth, fine. This is also a deceptively important change. Small bugs now have poison damage only. This is a swarm nerf, so it used to be, you get, let's pull up the spell, actually. When you cast Swarm, it would summon random bugs, right? And a whole bunch of those bugs had armor-negating attacks. So, like, I think it was Tiny Beetle? Tiny, or what was it? Small Beetle was what it was called? Small Shark? I forget what they were called. In any case, there were several different kinds of bugs that had armor-negating attacks. That was what made Swarm so dangerous, was that it could cut right through armor and do a ton of damage because of the way defense and attacks interact. You'd be completely surrounded by all these insects. A whole bunch of them will be doing one armor-negating damage every round. Now they only do poison. So if you have poison resistance, Swarm basically doesn't work. Yeah, ants, dragonflies, scorpions, the tiny spider, I think, had it. I know the beetle had it. So, like, half of the possible, the frog had it. Frogs had Tiny Bite, which was the armor-negating attack. But now, Swarm only does poison armor-negating damage. There are some bugs that still have armor-piercing standard damage attacks. But, it's a lot easier to handle. Now, this doesn't mean that Swarm Assassins are going to fail to kill mages. They are still going to kill ye old average, like, old guy in a robe with a stick very handily in an assassin. A dryad is still going to murder fuck your mage core. But this does mean that if you build a thug and you give him 10 poison resistance or 15 poison resistance or whatever, Swarm no longer kills him. So this is a thug buff, actually, as opposed to a direct Swarm nerf, if that makes sense. Swarm still does most of the things that it used to do. It just no longer kills thugs. They won't kill fully armored mages. This is true. If you have a heavily armored mage... Well, actually, no, it's not true. If you have a basic human mage who is wearing armor, he will still die unless he has poison resistance. Because the poison will still stack up, and it will still bleed off, and it only takes a total of 10 poison damage to kill a human mage. So, yeah, this will still kill warrior smiths. It will still kill master smiths. It will still kill late-age Tianqi old men in armor. It will still deal with all those guys unless they have poison resistance from something. But it means it's possible to stop it. They will still kill ponymen, yes. Ungeared ponymen will still die to Swarm because they don't natively have poison resistance. This is the most important change, of course. They have given gelatinous cubes. I believe someone said it was the life drain sound effect, which is sort of hilarious. Blood Surge is printed in combat stats. That's also important. Improved castle info. Okay. Fate Weaving Bless effect was not shown. So now apparently that is shown, which is great. More people will know what Fate Weaving does, which will be amazing. And then we have more Illwinter. Event fixes and stat fixes. We'll talk about what those mean in a little bit here, but basically event fixes, stat fixes, and many balance changes are... That's just classic Illwinter right there. Now let's talk about blesses. Blesses, we'll get to the demons broken. Don't worry, we'll get there. I'm kind of going through things in order here. The bless balance changes were kind of major and kind of not. We'll talk about blesses and scales together. And to do this, I'm actually going to swap over into the game, so hold on just a second. I know your screen is black, right? Okay, there we go, good. So, if we're creating a pretender god, and let's say Fomoria. All this stuff kind of wraps up into pretender god changes, so I'm going to talk about them all at once. And I'm just going to give him 3 points in everything so we can see all the blesses. The first thing you'll notice is that the Big Pig is a lot more expensive now. He used to be, I think, 150, 130, something like that. Now he's 200. So he's a lot more expensive, and in fact, most monsters are a lot more expensive. Hey Benzie, this is not a new series, it's just me talking about the Dominions 5 patch that just came out yesterday, because it is important. I will make a new series, but not this one. So, Worm, 230. Ram's Headed Serpent stayed exactly the same. So, Ram's Headed Serpent, new meta, I think so. He's the best. Dog of the Underworld also, I think, stayed the same. He's now one of the cheapest monsters, if not the cheapest. Thrice-Horned Boar, Great White Bull, and Great Black Bull both went up. The Drakon went up quite a bit. The Dragons went up 60 points. They used to be 200, now they're 260. Solar Eagle got more expensive for some reason. Earth Serpent went up another 30 points. So he's now 270. There is no possible way the Earth Snake is worth it. Longtime Lurker, yes, there is consensus that the monsters were costed. Most of them, but not all of them. Thrice-Horned Boar was absolutely dreadfully undercosted. Now he's priced probably fairly. Great White Bull, actually, to be honest, both of these should probably be a little bit more expensive if this is the pricing they're going for, because this, comparatively, is still very much not worth it. The Earth Serpent already wasn't worth it compared to most of the best expanders. He's more expensive than the Drakon right now. The Drakon is 250, and that's ridiculous. Raven of the Underworld is still cheap. Dog of the Underworld is still cheap. There are a few other selected monsters that are cheap, but generally, the ones that got hit with the nerf bat the hardest are the Earth monsters, especially the ones with regeneration or with nature magic, which I think is as it should be. Those were the best monsters by far, and yeah, they deserved to get nerfed. And yes, that was kind of the issue. With a Thrice-Horned Boar on Fomoria, when he was like 130 points or something, you could have like this, and you could still have good scales. He would expand just fine. Actually, he would expand really well. Let me not undersell it. And you'd have everything. Now, it's a little bit harder, still possible. Could be better, could be worse, but I think this was a step in the right direction. The other half of the pricing changes were the Titans. Some of them got reduced a little bit. They did not get reduced enough, let me be clear. These guys are still, to be honest, these guys should be cheaper than expanding monsters by a significant amount. And they're not. Like the Fomorian God King here, why the fuck is he 260 points? I don't understand. Water 1, Death 2. Yeah, he's a Titan chassis, but I don't get it. I just don't get it. Also, the Marigna is still 320 points. Worst game, 0 out of 10. For the Blesses, let's just, once again, pull up all the Blesses here. A lot of the Blesses got minor price changes. And or minor effect changes. So for example, Swiftness used to be Air 2, now it's Air 3, and it also gives you +1 defense score. So that's pretty neat. I would call that a side grade, kind of. Yes, Monster Expander was indeed the best choice in almost every case. And I know Illwinter's reasoning for the Titans, but their reasoning is dumb. It doesn't work. Death Explosion got scaling size. It's still probably not worthwhile, but it's a little bit more closer to worthwhile than it used to be. It used to be just garbage. Now it's mostly garbage, but could be funny. I could see middle-aged Marignon players being funny with this in the way that they used to be, but more effectively. Quickness now requires a magic scale, which basically I think makes it too expensive for practical use for almost anybody. Quickness was already kind of a marginal bless, and now it is unaffordable for most people. However, interestingly, Frost Weapons got cheaper, and it's non-incarnate. It's Water 4 now. It's still not very strong, but in the early age, I could see you maybe using it against people who don't have very high protection. Beyond that, it's marginal. It's still very marginal. Flaming Weapons did not get a nerf. Flaming Weapons is still 6 Fire Incarnate, which is not worth it. It's still bad. New Swiftness is pretty decent. Yep, Swiftness seems nice. Quickness Luck is indeed dead, because not only is Quickness now requiring Magic 1, Luck now requires Luck 2 and 9 Astral Bless points, so Luck also got more expensive. Once again, Luck was already very expensive, Luck was already, I think, marginal, and now it's not worth it, pretty much ever. Anybody who can afford the points for Luck can afford the points for something better. Magic Weapons also got nerfed, but in this case the nerf doesn't really matter, because it got nerfed to Astral 4. Now, you have to take 4 points of Astral to take Astral Blesses anyway. It used to be Astral 2. And most of the people taking S4 on their Pretender God were taking it to have Magic Weapons. So what this has actually done is it's changed the S4 Bless from Magic Weapons, Minor Magic Resistance, Arcane Command, which is irrelevant, to just Magic Weapons. So net, the nerf is actually -1 MR, which doesn't matter all that much. Was Luck ever worth it? Yes, Luck used to be worth it in combination with Undying when it was bugged so that Luck procced every time you were in negative hit points. After that, Luck was marginally useful if you had access to a lot of cheap human HP sacreds. For example, if you were middle-aged Marignon, you could take the Luck Bless along with some kind of attack bless to help your flagellants last longer and spam a ton of flagellants. That's no longer practical. In any case, moving on from that, I think Death Blesses all got left alone, I believe. Berserker was changed. Berserker now doesn't have to be activated. It's not an activatable bless, it's just a quality that all of your sacreds have when your god is awake. And that's kind of weird. I can see the appeal, I guess. But it does mean that it's impossible to dodge. If you have priest mages, you cannot use Berserker. Now, of course, Berserker never got used before, and now I can see a niche case for nations that don't have sacred mages or have well-protected sacred mages to use it on spammable sacred so that they just go Berserk very quickly. I could see that, potentially. I might experiment with it and try to do something. The other major changes were Larger got slightly cheaper, so perhaps that could be useful for size 4 or size 5 sacreds on certain giant nations, and Fortitude got more expensive, which I don't understand, but there it is. Fortitude got more expensive. Fire Shock Resistance, possibly the most common bless in the game, is still the same price. If anything in the Earth was going to get more expensive, I would say it should be Fire Shock Resist. I would say Fire Shock Resist and Hard Skin should probably swap places, balance-wise. Hard Skin should be 5, Fire Shock Resist should be 6, and I think that would actually balance things out a little bit more. Is Fate Weaving better? Is Fate Weaving good? Yes, Fate Weaving is indeed good. Did you say Reforming Flesh got a discount? Yep, you're right. Reforming Flesh got a discount. So that's an Armor buff, actually. That's basically all that is. Reforming Flesh only applies to a couple of nations. Basically Ermor and Lemuria, if I recall correctly. I can't think of any other Sacred Undead. I'm sure there are some others, but this is basically an Ermor buff. So yeah, a lot of the high-end blesses got nerfed. Fortitude got nerfed. Luck got nerfed. Most of the others stayed the same, but like Frost Weapons got a slight price buff, which doesn't matter to it very much because it's still bad. Quickness Luck is a little bad. I don't know. I don't get it. I really don't get it. It is a nerf to Hell Blesses because it makes it harder to get the Hell Bless things, but not all that much harder, to be honest, because I would say the most common and powerful bless in the game is Regeneration. And Regeneration did not get a price change. I think Giants with Regeneration are probably the single... Regeneration Blood Bond is probably one of the most powerful defensive combinations in the game. They nerfed the third part of the Wombo combo. They nerfed Fortitude, which is fine, but I think you can still do it even. Like, I think... Let's create an Ashdod Pretender here, okay? Let's go to Ashdod. The Golden Idol did not get a price change. The Golden Idol is still hella cheap. You need 8 for Fortitude now. You need 7 Nature, and you need 5 Blood. So Blood Bond, Fortitude, Regeneration. We're at minus 209 right now, so we'll go Misfortune, we'll go Drain. Yeah, we're fine. We lose 1 point of growth, but let's talk about scales changes. Growth also got nerfed. So growth no longer gives you as much income as it used to, which means that it's a lot okayer to go down to growth 2. Turmoil also got worse because Order got better. So Order now gives you more income. We can actually hop back to the notes real quick just to give you the exact deets on that. Welp, I don't know why it's showing the image. Let's cancel that out. Okay, so my... it's not liking me right now, but so you're just going to have to trust me on this when I say that the scale balance changings, order income went up to 3% per point, and resources went up to 3% per point, and growth income went from 4% down to 2% per point. So, you know. Yeah, that's not my... Streamlabs does not like it when I shift between window capture and game capture, so you're just going to have to... It is what it is. In any case, yeah, growth got demoted, order got buffed, which means turmoil got nerfed. You can still take turmoil, but it just hurts your income a little bit more. So Yeah, Hellbless Ashdod is a little worse than it used to be, because Fortitude is harder to take. But, I mean, you don't have to take Fortitude. Regeneration Blood Bond is most of the combo. You could also take Fire Shock Resist, have points, and have a couple of scales as well. This is a perfectly fine Ashdod Hellbless. You can't take Quickness Anakites anymore, very well, which saddens me a lot, but, because you can't take Drain. So if I go 10 there, I have to take Magic 1. Now I don't have the points to do this. So Quickness Anakites are dead. Tough Anakites are still very much alive and are now by far the optimal choice for Ashdod. But in any case, you can see here pretty much all the monsters. Moloch is now 320 points. My god. Why? Jesus, why? I mean, okay, he's Prot 20, but still, I don't get that. Alright. 320 points for the Moloch. Great. Love it. Master Lich got nerfed. Ghost King did not. Ghost King is the same price. I think he was 200 before. But yeah, monsters got nerfed. Titans got left alone or, moved by like 10 points in one direction or another. Demi-Lich got left alone, hilariously, because Demi-Lich is quite powerful, actually, in some contexts. And Immobiles mostly got left alone. I would say, if anything, this pushes me towards Rainbow Blesses. This pushes me more towards Immobiles and Rainbows than I was pushed already. Hey, come on, man. Quickness Anakites are less cancer than tough Anakites. Yes, for the event changes, I don't know exactly what's happened with the event changes, but I believe there have been event changes, and I'm not sure exactly how they're going to affect everything yet. We'll figure it out, but I think, like I said, Rainbows and Immobile Blessed Chassis are now probably going to be meta-controlling, just because monsters are generally so much worse. The Bulls are still okay. They were already, like, here, basically. I don't think they got much of a price nerf, so they should be alright. Hey, Chris, yeah, you're a little bit late. We've been running for about, I don't see where it tells me how long we've been running for about a half an hour, talking about stuff. So, scale changes, those are the only scale changes that I know of, is Turmoil and Growth got changed. Bless changes, the main thing is the high-end Incarnate Blesses got nerfed, generally speaking, except for Regeneration and Blood Vengeance. Those two are just fine. So, Regen, like I said, already, in my opinion, probably the most powerful high-end Bless, and it got left alone, so you'll see plenty more of that. And the low-end Blesses mostly didn't get touched, except for Frost Weapons and Swiftness. Frost Weapons, Swiftness, and Magic Weapons. Those all got changed. I guess Magic Weapons were just too good. Like I said, I don't think the Magic Weapon change is much of a nerf, Withersoul. I mean, it's a net alteration of about 1, and it's a fairly low point bless, so it doesn't cost you that much. So, for example, if I'm going to take Magic Weapons, I'll be taking, like, let's say I'm doing Fomoria, okay? I'm going to do a Fomoria Rainbow Bless for some reason. I just want to do that. I'm going to do a Fomoria Rainbow Bless. Looking at my options, probably going to take... So, Archdruid has Ivy Lord, which doesn't matter. Master Enchanter has Farcaster. Okay, let's take Master Enchanter. We're going to take Master Enchanter. We're going to take Regeneration for my Giants. I'll take Magic Weapons. Why not? There's no reason for me to do that, but I'll do it. We'll take Magic Weapons. I have 85 points left. I have 1 scale. We'll go Heat 3. Heat does hurt income, so maybe I won't go Heat 3. Maybe I'll just stay like this. Growth, maybe 2. Actually, I may even go Growth 1 and max out, like, Magic or something. I don't know, in any case, you can fool around with the scales, but this doesn't cost me much. It cost me about 20 points total, and unless I was going full Rainbow, which is not common, I was going to have to take Astral 4 anyway. So it doesn't really matter all that much. Yeah, it means -1 MR, basically. Like I said, that's a very small change. It's not all that impactful. Most of the time, 1 MR more or less is not going to make a difference, especially because in major battles, you're generally going to be able to have anti-magic or some equivalent up by the mid to late game. Nazgûl Sacreds did get nerfed somewhat, but we'll we'll figure it out. We'll talk about that in just a bit. Yeah, Condor rate got cut. Let me see if I can I get this thing to show me my screen again? I need my display back, please. Nope. Let's just remove that. Yep. Okay, show me my display, please. It does not want to show me my display. I hate Streamlabs sometimes. Pardon my blank screen here. Alas. I really wanted to show the mod inspector because I wanted to talk about some of the changes to spells. Okay, so generally speaking, let's just hop back into Dominions because it's not gonna let me see the screen, I can tell. Alright, there we go. So let's pull up Nazca. This is the worst way to do it, but we can still do it. We now have Summon Condors. Summon Condors, scaling has been reduced. It now gives you +1 for every extra level the Condor is. It doesn't have double scaling anymore. So Condors now, if you're doing the standard Nazca thing, which is Air 7, you don't get nearly as many of them. It used to be that you could get like 20, because Summon Condors requires Air 2. You got 2 more for every extra level, which was 5, so you'd end up with 20. Now you end up with 15, so you get fewer Condors. On top of that, Condors themselves have been nerfed slightly. Their siege bonus went from 5 to 1, so they're less capable to just smash forts instantaneously like they used to do. Nowadays, they just kind of... They still smash forts, but it takes more of them. Hey, Hassan Hogue, yes, blesses were nerfed, generally speaking. Ilwinter likes Titans, and they overprice them. We've talked about that before. More generally, and I'm going to talk about this generally because I don't have a full list of everything that was changed in the spells. There are those lists floating around. I'll link one such list. Generally speaking, summoning spells were nerfed, and they were nerfed in a real specific way. They were changed in such a way as to make them easier and better when cast by low-level mages en masse, but worse when cast by high-level mages. So for example, Call Kraken used to be 3 water gems, and now it's 1. So a water 3 mage can spam out Kraken for 1 gem. However, Cave Cows, which was not an oppressive spell, I would say, has actually been nerfed in the sense that it now has half scaling. In number of effects increases by 1 for every 2 extra levels the caster is. So the effect of this is, this spell, Summon Cave Cows, which like I said was already not a super impressive spell, is just as good as it was when it's cast by the minimum possible level of caster. But if you have a much more powerful mage and you want to summon Cave Cows, the spell is much worse than it used to be. And this is true of almost every scaling summon. I'm not going to say every single scaling summon, because I don't know that, but almost every scaling summon. Let's, for example, Ogres, okay? Ogres was not an oppressive summon. You spent 10 gems to get 5 Ogres plus 1 per extra level that you had. It was a low-level spell, so if you had like an Earth 8 Earth Serpent or something, you could be summoning 12 for 10 gems, which was kind of neat, but Ogres are not amazingly powerful. Well, now it has half scaling. So you don't get all those extra Ogres. If you have an Earth 9 casting this spell, you end up with 9 Ogres instead of 13. I don't see the reason for that, except that Ilwinter wants to encourage people to industrialize magic more. We're moving away from the era of artisanally handcrafted summons by the Master Mage. We're moving to spammed summons by the cheapest possible shit mage you can get to do the job. Other changes. So, in general, scaling summons nerfed hard in that way, tipped more towards low-level summoners. Other summon spells actually were changed in all kinds of ways. Drakes got cheaper. I think all the Drake spells got cheaper by 1 gem. Cave Drakes got cheaper. Where's the Swamp Drakes? Nope, Swamp Drakes stayed the same. Fire Drakes I know got cheaper. Most of the Drake spells got cheaper. However, Cave Crabs got twice as expensive. Somebody raise your hand. Was anyone spamming Cave Crabs and overwhelming games with them? Were Were 2-gem cave crabs, like, breaking anything? Yeah, I didn't think so either. As Cortigan, they added 0 automation. No automation whatsoever. You still have to cast all those spells automatically. You can still set the spell to repeat, repeat monthly, but beyond that, so yeah, cave crabs, rip cave crabs, I loved them so, and now they're just, hard to use. Now, some of the mass summons got actually a lot cheaper. For example, Naiad Warriors used to be 30 gems, it is now 18 gems for 15 Kedenids. Kedenids are... they're basically standard elite troops, except they have Awe 4. So they're almost impossible for normal units to attack. Personally, at this price, I think Naiad Warriors is going to be the new gold standard for mass summons. I think Naiad Warriors is probably the best general troop summoning spell in the game at this point. So this was they cut the price of this thing by 12 fucking gems. Now, it's hard to cast. You have to have a Water 3 Nature 1 mage. But this is now the Jomon special. Like, let's be real. If you can get, like, 1 Nature Random Ryujin, I would be casting this spell all the time for 18 gems. Contact Naiad, still pretty bad. Draconians got buffed, as was just mentioned. Contact Draconians got a lot cheaper. Draconians are still not good, but the Draconian Chief does free spawn Draconians, and at that much lower price, it might potentially pay off sometime before the end of the game, so maybe you use those guys for Siege Chaff. I don't know. The other major summon change is that Green Lions, which were a staple summon, got a lot more expensive, 50% more expensive, and I don't know why I'm not seeing them on this list. I think my brain must be going... because they're not Conjuration, duh. They are... Alteration. Yeah, Manifest Vitriol went from 2 gems to 3 gems. So, at that price, I think it's still worth it, which makes me think that probably this was an okay change, but it makes me sad because I loved massing Green Lions, and now they are a little bit pricey. You know what, Broken? I actually disagree. I think summoning Kedenids is now probably a better use of water gems than summoning Green Lions if you can do it, just because you spend only slightly, you spend like 1.2 gems per Kedenid and you spend 3 gems per Green Lion. So you can mass them, you can drop a whole bunch of buffs on them, you can use them as an actual army. And it'll be fine. But generally speaking, scaling summons got worse. Standard non-scaling summons kind of got better, but summoning is being pushed towards a lower level. It's a thing that you do in large quantities. Certain summons have been nerfed for reasons that escape me, that I don't understand, like the cave crabs, like the, sometimes I just don't get it. Like the cave cows, like, why were the cave spells in particular nerfed? Now, fun fact, there's one cave spell that was not nerfed. Cave grubs are now cheaper, so you can now siege better with cave grubs, but they have half scaling, so once again, you can't spam them out like you used to, with a high-level mage. So, I don't understand the logic behind that, but that is clearly the logic, and that's the direction they're moving in, so we're just gonna have to kind of live with it. And yes. Yeah, you're gonna have to rejigger your summons as it is. Now, Perun mentioned blood, and this is true. Blood summons got changed enormously. Blood summons got a ton of changes. In a weird way. A weird and interesting way. Going from the top here, from level 0, Bind Fiery Imps was a staple level 0 spell. It cost only 2 Blood Slaves, and it was 5 Fiery Imps, and it scaled. And Fiery Imps are cheap, shitty little dudes that throw little balls of fire, and they're pretty garbage, but you could mass them in huge quantities. You can't do that anymore. Blood Slaves now cost 6 Blood Slaves, and they have half scaling. So this spell got nerfed into the dirt. Now, normally, I'm all for nerfing Blood. I don't know why Bind Fiery Imps specifically got nerfed, because I don't think it was oppressive as far as Blood spells go, but it did, so okay, that got majorly nerfed. Bone Fiends got nerfed. Master Blaster is sad as hell because he can no longer spit out 13 Bone Fiends for 3 gems. Once again, I don't know why this spell in particular got nerfed, because it's not a very impressive spell. It wasn't already, and now it's much less impressive, but it did, so okay. Spine Devils got left alone. Fiends got left alone. Frost Fiends, actually, I said these were level 0, and that was a lie. This is because I have the mod on. Fiery Imps were, I think, level 1. Bone Fiends were level 3, I want to say. Fiend was level something. I forget exactly. Frost Fiends got nerfed. They cost 2 more Blood Slaves now. And then Storm Demons got hit. They cost 10 Blood Slaves now. And, yeah, Master Blaster was doing good, but oh well. So Storm Demons cost 10 now, which I think is probably fine. Storm Demons were quite powerful. Demon Knights now cost 15 Blood Slaves. They doubled in price. And I'm looking at this and I'm like, okay, like I said, I've thought for a long time that blood magic needed to be nerfed. I'm not sure it needed to be nerfed quite this hard. For one thing, Demon Knights are less powerful than Storm Demons. They don't have armor negating shock ranged attacks. All they are is they're very high quality units. They're very high quality cavalry, and they have fear. But fear has already been nerfed going into Dominions 5. It's not nearly so powerful as it used to be. And I don't think Demon Knights need to cost the equivalent of about 5 gems each just because of fear. And if something was going to cost 15 Blood Slaves, I think it should be Storm Demons, because Storm Demons are the most powerful standard blood summon. Demon Knights are probably second. To be honest, I think Frost Fiends can probably compete with them. They're just kind of a weird cross path that most people don't have. But I think these two should just be straight up swapped, personally. I think Demon Knights should be down here and cost 10 slaves. Storm Demons should be up here and cost 15. Send Horror, I think, also got nerfed. Lesser Horror. Call Horror. Where did Send Horror go? Yeah, Send Horror costs more. Curiously, the mass summoning spells at level 9 are all still the same price. And they even still have full scaling. So, these spells are now proportionately way, way, way better. Way better. It's interesting. Yes, Blood Globals did get nerfed. Blood Slaves now count as half a gem for the purpose of calculating Overcast, which makes perfect sense, and it's a step in the right direction. Blood Nations are still going to be able to put up Blood Globals with way more slaves than anybody can dispel, but it's a step in the right direction. So you're like, Blood Vortex, Blood Vortex costs 166. It counts as effectively being 83 gems if you're trying to dispel it. 83 is still a lot, and a Blood Nation can still afford to put this up with 300 slaves. In which case, you're probably not going to sink 150 pearls into a dispel attempt. Like, let's be real, you're not going to do that. If you have 150 pearls, you're going to put up Arcane Vortex yourself instead. Astral Corruption, same thing. Blood Nations can still afford to dump more slaves into putting these spells up than you can into dispelling them, and so it's not going to change. So, but yeah, these spells got left alone. These spells down here got nerfed, generally speaking, which is weird. It's interesting. Yeah, I know I said the wrong thing. Relax. Your Overcast, the point stands. The Blood Nation is going to cast this with 300 slaves, and you're still not going to be able to dispel it. Like, it's not going to change. Unless the Blood Nation is trying to min-cast for some reason, in which case, if they min-casted, you would have been able to dispel it already anyway. Attempting to dispel a Blood Global is still a pretty stupid thing to do, and you're not going to... That hasn't changed. It's not going to change. So, yeah, Blood's gotten nerfed, but in a weird way. Now, to be fair, these spells... Oh, and Father Ill-Earth now costs more, so good old Pedosian will be a little bit... see, once again, this doesn't matter. Once you get up to level 7 blood, if you can't afford 105 blood slaves, you couldn't afford 85 blood slaves. Changes like that are irrelevant. Blood's in a weird place, right? Because even when we're looking at 15 slaves per Demon Knight, like, that's high enough that it starts to matter. You know? Because that's the equivalent, like I said, of about 5 gems or so. 10 blood slaves, at this point, the main cost is still the mage turn, to be honest. At this point, you start to consider the slaves. But once you get up to these spells, the big ones where you're summoning strong individuals, super combatant chassis, that kind of thing, vampire lords, the slave cost is almost irrelevant. Like, I mean, recall, I was playing early age Ulm with one province that could recruit blood mages, and I still shit out like 9 vampires by the end of the game. Like, I still spent hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of blood slaves on summons. And I was spamming disease demons, and I cast 3 red seconds like 3 or 4 times. Like, you get a lot of blood slaves. A lot of blood slaves. It's pretty impressive. Yeah, 6p, the thing is, maybe you can overcast it once, but by the time they're casting Astral Corruption, a Blood Nation has an income of like 200 or 300 blood slaves per turn. So they cast Astral Corruption with a turn and a half's worth of income. You alchemize a whole bunch of gems to cast a 90-some gem Dispel, and Dispel it, and they cast it again the next turn. You know? Like, you haven't... In terms of the cost-benefit ratio, you're still spending a lot more to take down a Blood Global than a Blood Nation is spending to put it up. So it's in their interest to cast it, let you dispel it, cast it again, let you dispel it again. They can do that all day and you can't. You'll run out of gems. And I don't think that's ever going to change. I think that's one of kind of the defining characteristics of Blood in a weird way. Now, of course, Vampire Lords have effectively been nerfed by the fact that they can be soul slain. But like I said, that's not... You know, they could already be enslaved. So it's not really a huge, huge thing. I don't know. Blood's been changed. I think Blood is slightly weaker now, which is good, mainly because their single unit summons are worse, and that was what Blood Nations tended to do quite a bit of in the early and mid game. So that's fine. Like, I like that, personally. Like I said, I think Demon Knights and Storm Demons should be swapped, but I'm not crying any tears about it, really. This is going to make it harder for Blood Nations that don't have national blood summons. So talking about national blood summons, a number of the national summoning spells have also been changed. However, funnily enough, national blood spells generally have not, or if they have been changed only very minorly. So for example, Bind Jaguar Fiends costs 3 more blood slaves now, which is pretty much immaterial. And Reign of Jaguars has not been changed. So Reign of Jaguars is still just exactly the same, and it's still going to be what Mictlan's late game is. It's kind of funny. Yes, Mind Hunt has a Soul Slay effect, but once again, any nation that can cast Mind Hunt enough to successfully Mind Hunt away your Immortal Raiders can also just enslave mind them in combat. Mind Hunt is expensive, and it can only be cast by high-level Astral Mages. There's maybe 1 or 2 nations in the game that can actually spam it, and you just don't... I mean, you already didn't raid those nations with Immortals because there was no reason to. You know, you didn't have to take that chance. If they can Mind Hunt you, they can also teleport on top of you and cast Enslave Mind and actually steal your Immortal. So, like I said, you already wouldn't do that. Plus, Mind Hunt is risky because you might get feeble-minded. Like, the only nation line that can actually Mind Hunt a lot in native is Arco. Because Arco has recruitable mages. Yeah, Games Brandon, there's a difference between the ritual and the combat phase, but teleportation happens in the ritual phase. Like, you can teleport on top of a raider and enslave them, and be done. That's it. So, yeah, Arco is pretty much the only nation that can Mind Hunt a lot successfully. No games, Brandon. Vampires still care a lot about teleportation. They can sneak, but if they're sneaking, that means they're not attacking. So, in general, if you're being forced to sneak your vampires around, that's fine. That means that your damage is being halved, because every other turn you have to sneak. So, that's a success. That's somebody having the damage you're doing with no actual effort on their part. They don't even have to actually teleport. They only have to maintain the ability to teleport, and you have to take it into account. So, yeah, they're, it's not a huge change. It's a small change. It's a small nerf. It does something. It doesn't do a whole lot. Other changes. A number of spell changes got put through. So, a lot of Pretenders have been altered in price, as I talked about. Horde of Skeletons got very, very minorly nerfed. It now summons one less skeleton, and it has half scaling. So, high-level mages like the classic D9 Demi-Lich defending a fort can no longer churn out infinite skeletons as quickly. He can still churn out infinite skeletons, it just takes more turns. Items have been altered. The Demon Bane has been made 5 gems instead of 10, and the Holy Scourge has been made 10 gems instead of 5. That's a small Yomi buff, essentially, because the Demon Bane does less damage than the Holy Scourge, and comes later in the construction tree. Demon Bane is construction 6, and Holy Scourge is construction 2. So, Dione are now a little bit harder to splat in the early game. They're still just as easy to splat in the late game, though. Wailing Winds now costs an extra gem, so it costs 2 gems, which means it's harder to cast. That's effectively the change. If we hop into our spell browser again, Wailing Winds was, I think, Evocation. Yeah, so Wailing Winds now costs 2 death gems, which means you, Actually, that doesn't change how you can cast it, does it? You can still cast it with a Death 3. Yeah, you can still cast this with a D3, so the only difference is it costs more fatigue now. The biggest spell change, I think, is... where is it? I've entirely... It's in Enchantment, that's right. The single biggest spell change is Rigor Mortis now costs 3 death gems, which means it can only be cast by a true Death 4. You have to be Death 4, you have to be like a Death 3 with a booster, or an actual Death 4 mage in order to cast Rigor Mortis. You can't be like a Death 2 carrying a Skull Staff anymore. This is an Urmor nerf, basically. Urmor used to be able to cast Rigor Mortis with spectators. You forge a Skull Staff, you give it to a spectator, now he's Death 3, now he can cast Rigor Mortis, and you send one spectator with each army, cast Rigor Mortis, and overwhelm the enemy with skeletons. That's no longer possible. Now you have to use Dusk Elders to cast Rigor Mortis, and it has to be either a Dusk Elder with a Skull Staff or a Dusk Elder who randomed Death 4. That's a lot rarer, and it's more of an investment. So it limits the number of armies Urmor can have tooling around with Rigor Mortis up all the time. Like I said, that's basically an Urmor nerf and a Lemuria, a small-ish Lemuria nerf. There aren't a whole lot of other nations that want to use Rigor Mortis all the time. And generally, if you want to use Rigor Mortis as anyone else, you'll be using it on 1 or 2 armies, and you'll be able to get up to that Death 4. I guess this also nerfs, like, Machaka, which sometimes does that. I don't know. It's not a huge deal. I mean, it's the biggest deal of the spell changes. Of a single spell change, that Rigor Mortis nerf is probably the biggest one. The other one that's actually really interesting is Firestorm. Firestorm, right here, battlefield enchantment spell, causes 6 armor-piercing damage to, I believe, half the battlefield every round. Used to be 5 fire gems and 500 fatigue, and now it's 3 fire gems and 300 fatigue. Now, this doesn't actually do what you might think. As a battlefield clear, Firestorm is best cast by a super combatant, by a Flagrant Tyrant, or a Basalt King, or something of that type. Somebody who has a lot of fire and also has a lot of protection and a lot of hit points, so he can cast Firestorm and just sit in it and wait for the enemy army to burn to death. This right here makes that a lot easier, because you can take a Fire 4 Flagrant Tyrant or Laestrygonian Tyrant or whatever, walk them into an enemy army, cast Firestorm. If you use an extra gem, you won't even fall asleep. So you can cast a couple of buffs, cast Firestorm, and then go on fighting. while the Firestorm is in effect, when as before, you had to walk onto the field, cast Firestorm, take a couple points of damage, and take a nap while the Firestorm burned. Now, it's a lot easier to do. You can also cast it in battles more easily, and if you cast, like, Army of Gold and Firestorm, Firestorm is now a lot easier to cast in communions, so Middle-Aged Phlegra, once again, can use it as a communion spell now. In general, it's a lot more useful. I'm sure they did this because Firestorm doesn't do all that much damage, to be honest. Yes, Wailing Winds got the fatigue increase. Anytime the gem cost of a spell changes, the fatigue cost of that spell also changes. Every gem that a spell costs is 100 fatigue. That's a strict relationship. So Wailing Winds went from 100 fatigue to 200 fatigue. That still doesn't really change how it's used. It's still castable with the same kind of mage. That mage was already going to be taking a nap pretty quickly, so it doesn't matter all that much that it costs 200 fatigue now. Except in that if you're casting it in Drain, you may take some damage. So if you're a human and you cast that spell, you might take a hit. It's not that big a deal. And it doesn't, like I said, it doesn't change how the spell is used. This changes how the spell is used a little bit, in the sense that it's more practical to actually use now. Also, fun fact, a Basalt King with the right setup can now cast Firestorm and then Acid Storm back to back and have them both active, which is sort of hilarious. Probably not efficient, but hilarious. A Firestorm and Acid Storm. Now all you need is Wrathful Skies. All you need is if you have all three of those active, plus then just for fun, you would probably also throw in Meteor Shower, and we'd just be having a good time. Everybody die. In any case, I think that's most of the changes. Solar Brilliance got cheaper as well, but nobody cares about Solar Brilliance. It's not a very good spell. Beyond that, there are, of course, I'm sure, a bunch of invisible changes that I have not noticed yet, like the things that are listed as event fixes. A number of events have been altered. A number of stats have been altered. Perun, yes, this does make Firestorm more practical as a battlefield clear. The weakness of Firestorm was that it was very expensive for the relatively low amount of damage it did. Now it's cheaper. It still does that relatively low amount of damage, but it's cheap enough that you can afford to put it up. So, for example, as Abyssia, at this point, I would now expect Firestorm to go up in every battle once you have Firestorm researched, because Abyssia has the Fire Gem income, and they have natively Fire 3 mages who can ramp up to cast it very easily. There's no reason they wouldn't. So just expect that. Once they hit the proper research and evocation, Abyssia is just going to cast Firestorm on you all the time, even more than they already did. But generally speaking, the overall changes. Summons, nerfed, except for a few specific ones which were radically buffed. Scaling is down, so your high-level mages will now generally have better things to do than summoning. You'll probably see more high-level items forged, I would guess, because those high-level mages will be using gems for that instead. You will see a lot more Naiad Warriors, because that summon is, that is a good-ass spell right now. You'll probably see, Death Magic has been nerfed. But, to be honest, I don't think it will really change the way it's used most of the time. Horde of Skeletons being slightly weaker will not change the fact that Horde of Skeletons is a spell that summons chaff, which gives you time to summon more chaff. So it's kind of recursive in that way. Still an incredibly powerful spell. If they want to make it less powerful, what they actually have to do is change the cast time to make it take longer so that you can't spam the stuff out as quickly. Nazca has been nerfed somewhat. In terms of stat changes, by the way, I should mention, Anakites and Rephite Warriors are now a little bit more expensive. They went up 15 gold. So Ashdod has been slightly nerfed in that way. And of course, the scales now hurt them worse, because if you're taking Hell Scales for a Fantastic Bless, your income is lower. So there's that. So Ashdod's been slightly nerfed. Nazca's been slightly nerfed. Ermor, I would say, has been slightly nerfed. Overall, I think this patch is a move in the right direction. I don't understand why they did everything. Like, why would you nerf Cave Crabs? I don't get it. Why would you buff Naiad Warriors that much? Also, potentially a little bit skeptical of that, but to be honest, I mean, there always has to be something that's best, right? So, okay. I don't know, like I said, I don't know exactly what the event changes are going to be, what they're going to do, but I would anticipate, actually, what I would hope for is, I would hope that they're making misfortune and luck more impactful on both ends of the scale, because I want those to be more impactful. With turmoil being worse, in the sense that it hurts your income more, and if misfortune is worse, that would be a pretty significant nerf to Hellscale strategies in general. And that would be nice to see less of that. I would hope that if they did that, they also made luck better, but I can't prove that they did. I haven't done the code diving to check through all the events. I don't know what the event changes entail. So I can't say that luck is better or worse or whatever. But it's an interesting patch. We'll kind of have to see where it goes. Overall, I think this is a positive step for the game. I think Ilmater's done a pretty good job here. I think there are some things I'm skeptical about, but nerfing Nazca, nerfing Armor, nerfing Blood a little bit. Overall, I think this is a good move. I am going to have to actually cut the stream off pretty much now. I've got to head out for the evening. But I just wanted to kind of give a few basic thoughts here. Like I said, I think this is a good move. I think we're making progress. We're balancing out the scales a little bit better, so growth is not the be-all and end-all, because now order and production actually give more income than growth does. So in the short term, certainly growth and production will be better than growth. I mean, sorry, order and production are better than growth. Growth is only better strictly over the long term. I think we're doing God's work here. We're moving in the right direction. So I like it. I'm going to be playing a lot more Dominions in the future, and we'll see how that changes things. Yes, Vilk, this will be a video on the channel as soon as we're done. It'll be processed. It'll probably take an hour or so to process, and then after that, it will be up and available to watch. So, thanks everybody for watching, for joining me. Really appreciate it, and I'll see you all in the next video.